And then what did you make of Sophie Cunningham's flagrant foul on JC towards the end?
It was a flagrant foul.
You think it's like defending Caitlin or defending the team, or how do you view just how it all?
I view it as a flagrant foul.
Wow, that's about the game too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys came for basketball.
Yeah,
Let's talk about basketball.
Yeah.
Come on now.
What do you think of just how you all were able to pull away in the second half, Caitlin in particular?
We're going to the Commissioner Cup Championship.
Let's
That's
go!
pretty exciting. Y'all want to talk about that? Let's talk about that.
What do you think, again, in the second half?
This is all going according to plan. This is ideal. Caitlin Clark is holding up her end by being awesome and by being a trash-talking jerk on the court. Love it. Her teammates are holding up their end by having her back. The other players in the league are holding up their end by not liking her. Perfect. Couldn't have written a better script. Caitlin is talking trash to this girl. This girl's hard fouling her. Her teammate Sophie Cunningham, who got a black belt in Taekwondo at the age of 6, she's like, I will F you guys up. All of it's great, and Caitlin's a killer. 10 out of 10, no.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're diving into a story that's got more twists and turns than a championship game in double overtime. It's about a phenomenon, a force of nature, who walked onto the professional stage and didn't just change the game. She threatened to rewrite the entire rulebook of women's sports. We're talking, of course, about Caitlin Clark. Imagine a talent so immense, so undeniably magnetic, that it sends shockwaves through an entire league, promising a golden era. Record-breaking viewership, arenas packed to the rafters, jerseys flying off the shelves. The kind of explosive growth the WNBA had been working towards for decades suddenly delivered on a silver platter. But here's the kicker, the part that keeps everyone whispering, what happens when that very same generational talent, the one carrying the league on her shoulders, finds herself in the crosshairs? What if the institution she's enriching, and even some of her peers, seem more intent on dimming her shine than basking in its glow? This isn't just about basketball. It's about a paradox that could see the WNBA's biggest blessing become its most public and perhaps most damaging battle. And the whispers are growing louder. Whispers of an escape, a power move that could leave the league reeling. Before Caitlin Clark even laced up her sneakers for her first WNBA game, the anticipation was palpable. It was more than just hype, it was the culmination of a collegiate career that had shattered records and captured the national imagination in a way few athletes, male or female, ever do. She wasn't just a scorer, she was a virtuoso, a conductor leading an orchestra of fast breaks and logo threes. Her games at Iowa became must-see TV, drawing millions who might never have tuned into a women's college basketball game before. She had that rare combination of skill, swagger, and an almost preternatural ability to deliver in the clutch. The Caitlin Clark effect was already a known quantity, a proven Midas touch that turned every game she played into a major event. So, when she declared for the WNBA draft, it wasn't just a new player entering the league. It was like a blockbuster franchise announcing its arrival, promising sequels, spin-offs, and a whole new universe of fans. The WNBA, quite rightly, saw dollar signs, but perhaps they underestimated the sheer magnitude of the earthquake that was about to hit. And hit, it did. The numbers aren't just impressive, they're staggering, almost laughably dominant. We're talking about viewership for WNBA games on major networks exploding, not by 10 or 20%, but by triple-digit percentages. Games featuring Clark and the Indiana Fever weren't just selling out their home arena, they were forcing opposing teams to move their games to much larger NBA venues, simply to accommodate the tidal wave of fans desperate to catch a glimpse of this once-in-a-generation talent. Her jersey? It became the highest-selling jersey of any athlete in any sport the moment it dropped. Think about that. More popular than NBA superstars, NFL quarterbacks, global soccer icons. This wasn't just a rising tide lifting all boats. This was a tsunami, and Caitlin Clark was the one summoning the waves. The financial implications were enormous. A sudden, massive injection of revenue and relevance into a league that, while filled with incredible talent, had often struggled for mainstream attention. It was, by all accounts, a dream scenario. The golden goose hadn't just arrived, she was laying golden eggs at an unprecedented rate. But almost as quickly as the cheers erupted, a different kind of sound began to emerge from the court. The thud of bodies hitting the floor, the sharp intake of breath from the crowd, the uneasy silence after a particularly hard foul. It became clear, game after game, that the welcome mat laid out for Caitlin Clark had some very sharp thumbtacks hidden underneath. This wasn't just the usual welcome to the pros rookie physicality. There was an edge to it, a targeting that felt different. Hip checks that sent her sprawling off-ball shoves that seemed to come out of nowhere, aggressive closeouts that bordered on reckless. It wasn't always subtle. Plays like the infamous body check from Chennedy Carter, a shoulder-to-chest blow completely away from the ball, became viral sensations for all the wrong reasons. It wasn't just one player or one team. It felt like a league-wide memo had gone out. Test her, push her, see how much she can take. And through it all, Clark's typical reaction, or lack thereof, getting up, dusting herself off and moving on, seemed to only pour fuel on the fire for her detractors. What made this unfolding drama even more frustrating for her rapidly growing fanbase was the perceived silence of the whistles. As Clark absorbed hit after hit, many of which looked like clear, flagrant fouls to the armchair referees watching at home, the officials often seemed to look the other way. Or, if a whistle did blow, it was often just a common foul, a slap on the wrist that did little to deter the aggression. This perceived leniency sent a dangerous message that this kind of play was acceptable, or at least tolerable when directed at the league's biggest star. The online world erupted. Hashtags like #NowProtectCaitlin Clark started trending. Fans became amateur Zapruder film analysts, slowing down clips, circling illegal screens, and digitally screaming into the void for the kind of protection they felt any other player, let alone a marquee player, would receive. It created a bizarre cognitive dissonance. The league was clearly benefiting immensely from her presence, yet it seemed unwilling or unable to ensure her basic safety on the court. And what about the WNBA front office itself? The very institution that should have been trumpeting her arrival from the rooftops, and more importantly, ensuring its most valuable asset was protected, seemed conspicuously quiet on the issue of her on-court treatment. Statements were made, of course, usually generic platitudes about player safety and the physicality of the game. But to many observers, these felt like carefully worded deflections rather than a firm stance. There was a sense that the league was quicker to comment on minor infractions or off-court issues than it was to address the systematic and often blatant targeting of its newest, brightest star. This inaction, whether intentional or simply a case of being overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight, created a vacuum. And into that vacuum rushed speculation, frustration, and a growing narrative that the league was, perhaps, not entirely unhappy to see its phenom taken down a peg or two, even if it meant risking her health and the league's own image. Then came the truly bewildering twist. The narrative pushed by some media commentators and even a few former players that Caitlin Clark herself was somehow to blame for the aggression she faced. The arguments were almost surreal. She was too confident. She engaged in trash talk. She didn't show enough deference to the veterans. Essentially, she brought it on herself. Let's pause for a moment and consider the absurdity of this. We're talking about professional sports, an arena built on ferocious competition, psychological warfare, and yes, a healthy dose of trash talk. Michael Jordan wasn't exactly known for his meekness on the court. Larry Bird could dismantle an opponent's confidence with a few choice words before the opening tip. Their competitive fire, their verbal jousting, is celebrated, immortalized in sports lore. But when Caitlin Clark, a young woman operating at the highest level, exhibits similar traits, it's suddenly reframed as a provocation, an invitation for physical reprisal. This glaring double standard wasn't just unfair, it felt deeply misogynistic, a bizarre attempt to police her behavior while excusing the aggressive actions of others. Commentators would contort themselves into logical pretzels to justify a blatant shove, analyzing Clark's body language as if she were somehow telepathically inviting the contact. This uncomfortable dynamic seemed to tap into a broader, more nebulous sentiment within parts of the league, the idea of gatekeeping. It's a term that got thrown around a lot. The theory goes that some veteran players, who had toiled for years in relative obscurity, fighting for every column inch of media coverage and every dollar in their contracts, resented the immediate, overwhelming adulation heaped upon Clark. She hadn't paid her dues in their eyes. Paid what dues exactly? The ones that involved playing in half-empty arenas for a fraction of the attention she was now single-handedly generating for everyone? It's a complex emotion, perhaps understandable on a human level, to see someone waltz in and instantly achieve what you've strived a lifetime for. But from a purely pragmatic business perspective, it was baffling. Here was a player literally elevating the entire league, putting more money in everyone's pockets, and drawing eyeballs that could benefit every single player. Yet, for some, the focus seemed to be less on capitalizing on this golden opportunity and more on putting the rookie in her place. The so-called rivalry with Angel Reese, in particular, became a media focal point, often framed as the marquee individual battle in the league. But from the outset, it felt different from classic sports rivalries. Magic vs. Bird was built on a grudging, deep-seated respect. Federer vs. Nadal was a clash of titans who pushed each other to unprecedented heights. The Clark-Reese dynamic, however, often seemed fueled by something else. When Reese delivered that now infamous hit to Clark's head, a play later upgraded to a flagrant foul, and was then seen being celebrated by teammates on the bench, it laid bare the undercurrent. This wasn't just about intense competition. For some, it appeared to be personal. Clark, for her part, largely seemed focused on playing basketball, on trying to win games for a struggling Fever team. But the narrative of an intense, bitter rivalry persisted, often used consciously or unconsciously to legitimize or downplay some of the more aggressive tactics employed against her. It felt less like a rivalry that elevated both players and more like a spotlight on a one-sided obsession, cheapening the very notion of what a great sports rivalry should be. And through all of this, Caitlin Clark found herself in an impossible bind, held to a standard of stoic professionalism that few, if any, athletes could consistently maintain under such circumstances. If she reacted to a hard foul, if she showed visible frustration, if she argued a call, all perfectly normal human reactions in a high-stakes competitive environment, she was instantly labeled immature, entitled, can't handle the pressure, not ready for the pros. But if she didn't react, if she absorbed the hit, got up and silently walked away, she was then criticized for being arrogant, distant, not connecting with her teammates, or not emotional enough. There was simply no right way for her to act. Every possible response was twisted, reframed as a character flaw. Meanwhile, the players delivering the questionable hits often faced far less scrutiny for their own on-court conduct. This relentless psychological game, played out in the media and on social media, added another layer of immense pressure on a young athlete already carrying the weight of a league's expectations. Beyond the immediate on-court drama and the media circus, it's crucial to consider the potential long-term damage the WNBA might be inflicting upon itself. What message is this entire saga sending to the next Caitlin Clark? To all the incredibly talented young women currently dominating in college basketball, dreaming of a professional career? They're watching this unfold. They see the league's biggest draw, its most marketable star, being treated not like a cherished asset, but like a target. They see her success seemingly punished, rather than unequivocally celebrated and protected. Why would the next generational phenom willingly walk into an environment that appears at times to cannibalize its own? The WNBA could be, inadvertently or not, poisoning the well for future talent, making the league a less attractive destination for the very players it needs to thrive in the years to come. And it's not just future players, corporate sponsors are watching too. Brands invest in growth, in excitement, in positive narratives. They tend to shy away from public relations nightmares, internal strife, and a product that looks unstable or unprofessional. By failing to get ahead of this narrative, by not demonstrably protecting its star, the league isn't just risking one player, it's potentially damaging its brand reputation and scaring away the very investment it needs to secure its future. This brings us to those persistent, swirling rumors. The idea that Caitlin Clark might just decide she's had enough. And this is where the story shifts from one of perplexing treatment to one of potential ultimate leverage. Two main scenarios keep bubbling to the surface in online forums, sports podcasts, and late-night fan discussions. The first, and perhaps more conventional, is the European escape. She could, theoretically, sign a lucrative multi-million-dollar contract to play overseas. In many European leagues, women's basketball stars are treated with immense respect, often playing in packed arenas for passionate fan bases. And, crucially, earning significant salaries, sometimes even more than WNBA max contracts. She would be paid handsomely, likely face less of the targeted physicality and be allowed to just play basketball free from the relentless scrutiny and the unique brand of drama that seems to have followed her in the WNBA. It would be a loss for the WNBA, undoubtedly, but a perfectly understandable personal and professional choice for Clark. The second scenario is far more dramatic, almost the stuff of a Hollywood script, the billionaire's gambit. The theory posits that a wealthy investor, or a consortium of investors, observing the WNBA's apparent self-sabotage and recognizing Clark's undeniable market power, could approach her with an audacious proposal. Something along the lines of, "We'll pay you an astronomical sum, say $50 million to sit out a year, just to definitively prove the WNBA cannot sustain its current momentum without you." Or, even more radically, they could offer to fund an entirely new rival women's professional basketball league in North America, with Caitlin Clark as its undisputed centerpiece, its marketing engine, and its prime attraction. This would be a direct existential challenge to the WNBA, a move so disruptive it could reshape the landscape of women's professional sports overnight. It would be an attempt to build a new empire, potentially on the ruins of an old one, that failed to recognize the value of its brightest star. While highly speculative, the mere fact that such ideas are being seriously discussed highlights just how precarious the WNBA's situation with Clark is perceived to be. It's impossible to know what's truly going through Caitlin Clark's mind amidst this whirlwind. She's consistently maintained a professional front, focusing on her team and her game, at least publicly. But the mental toll of being the subject of such intense debate, such constant physical challenge, and such conflicting expectations must be immense. To be hailed as a savior one moment and then subtly, or not so subtly, undermine the next. To have your every move dissected and your character questioned, all while trying to adjust to the highest level of your sport. It's a burden few could carry without strain. The pressure isn't just to perform, to score points and win games. It's to be a diplomat, a punching bag, a role model, and a revolutionary, all at the same time. This isn't just about handling on-court physicality, it's about navigating a complex emotional and political minefield day in and day out. So, the WNBA finds itself at a genuine crossroads, a critical inflection point. It has been handed a golden ticket, a generational talent who has, in a matter of months, delivered on the promise of mainstream relevance and explosive growth. Yet the narrative surrounding that talent has become mired in controversy, negativity, and a perception of a league at war with itself. The path forward requires more than just hoping things will calm down. It likely requires a clear, unequivocal, and public demonstration that the league values and will protect its stars. All its stars, but especially those who are demonstrably lifting the entire enterprise. It requires fostering a culture where new talent is embraced as an asset, not a threat. And it requires a recognition that the old ways of doing things may not be sufficient for the new reality that Caitlin Clark has ushered in. Ultimately, Caitlin Clark is trapped in a profound paradox. The league desperately needs her for its continued growth, for its television deals, for its ticket sales, for its very survival in the competitive sports landscape. Yet, elements within and around the league seem to foster a culture that actively punishes her for the very greatness that makes her so valuable. She's the undisputed star of the show, but she's also, too often, treated like the designated villain or, at best, the resilient punching bag. If she chooses to stay, she's implicitly signing up for more of the same, unless there's a fundamental shift in how she's treated by opponents, officials, and the league itself. If she chooses to leave, whether for Europe or for some yet-to-be-imagined venture, it won't be an act of surrender. It will be an act of profound self-respect, a declaration that her talent, her well-being, and her peace of mind are worth more than enduring a system that seems, at times, unwilling or unable to fully embrace her. And so, we're left with a lingering, somewhat sobering question. What happens if the day comes when Caitlin Clark is no longer a WNBA player? When the arenas are a little quieter, when the viewership numbers inevitably dip, when the mainstream media turns its gaze elsewhere because the Caitlin Clark show has moved on, what will that silence sound like? It might sound like regret. It might sound like a league finally forced to confront the reality of an opportunity squandered, a phenomenon it was too slow, too proud, or perhaps too fractured to fully champion. Caitlin Clark's story is still being written, and her next chapter could very well determine the future trajectory, not just of her own career, but of the WNBA itself. What do you think is the best path forward for Caitlin Clark and for the WNBA? Is the criticism she faces fair, or is it a symptom of a larger issue? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if this deep dive got you thinking, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the world of sports and beyond. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.